Hello and welcome to episode 15. I've remembered the number this time. I'm getting good at this. Today, I've got a very special guest, someone I've been trying to get on for a while, and for different reasons, mostly my fault, we've only just managed to get it together to do this. So I'd like to welcome Jess De Wahls. Hi, Jess.
Hiya.
Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
You did, yes.
Ah, good, because I wasn't sure. I was thinking, is it De Wahls? Is it De Wahls?
Oh,
So
that's what most people say here, but
So for those that don't know, and I'm sure loads of people know who you are because you're quite famous, aren't you? But who are you and what do you do?
I am a textile artist, doing lots of work that is around feminism and female bodies and functions and such things. And what do I do? Well, I embroider mostly, but recently fell into the crochet.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess I'm mostly well known not because I'm so good at what I do, which I am.
You are. I've seen the work. Well, I've not seen it in life, but I've seen it's excellent stuff. We're going to show some in a bit. Yeah.
But it's been more infamous, I guess, that made it more widely that I've been known because I happen to have an opinion and happen to not be shy about it. And
How dare you be a woman with an opinion?
yeah,
Know
exactly.
your place.
Exactly. And so the thing is, I mix my art with my opinion, which rubs a lot of people the wrong way.
That's a sure way to annoy people, isn't it?
Yeah, as some people said, that it's so unfortunate that I'm so talented because I'm so horrible.
Yeah, how can somebody so horrible produce things that are so amazing?
As a compliment, I find that hilarious. When your haters find it impossible to find fault with your work quality, then that's a good thing. I don't care.
That's what they look for first, isn't it? They're going to look for that stray thread or whatever that isn't quite right.
Yeah.
So before we get on to your artwork and your embroidery and also your notoriety or notoriety, I kind of always do this at the beginning of an interview because I don't do this purposefully, but I only seem to be interviewing knitters and crocheters. And I was really thrilled when I actually found out you crochet. So I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit about how you started crochet and what you're working on at the moment.
Yeah. So how I started it was because I came across a picture of an octopus online, and my sister-in-law, she crochets. And so I did the thing that I hate people doing to me and went to her, "Oh, could you make that for me?" And she's like, "Oh, it's really complex, and I don't really. Oh, it's a lot of work, and da da da." And I'm like, "Yeah, fair enough." I mean, I would have said that. So I downloaded the pattern, and then I thought, well, I'll give it a go. And so I crocheted that, and then
wow. So that was your first.
That was my first one. Yeah, I like to jump in on the deep end because I kind of think.
Do?
Well, yeah, because you kind of, when you learn, I'll show you because I had to do 4 so far because my 2 nephews, they demanded, and now my son also really loves playing with them.
Wow.
So it's this thing.
Oh, that is so good.
It's super cute. So here I still have to attach the eyes. There's another one in my bedroom because we're going to Berlin on the weekend, so I need to take them with and finish.
You've even got the suckers on the tentacles, haven't you?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that black one's amazing.
It's cute, isn't it?
Yeah.
I have to say, because they gave me the color choices that they wanted. And when my little nephew said that he wants black, red, and yellow, I'm like, a German flag, really?
Oh,
but then actually it doesn't look so bad. It kind of looks more like Pikachu or something. Like,
oh, it's really effective, isn't it? It looks really good.
I like it. So the pattern that I had found was more like natural colors and stuff. And I'm still gonna make one for me eventually, but I ended up doing one for my goddaughter, one for her brother, 2 for my nephews. And then I came across online, because the thing is, I like to jump in on the deep end because it gives you an opportunity to really quickly learn all the things. Because if you do something that big, then you're so repetitive that by the end of it, you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then I came across kitty cat. Sorry, my cat wants
attention. Oh, don't worry. I've got 3, so at some point a cat's going to jump over the screen, so don't worry.
It's basically because as long as I don't have a baby on my lap, she's like, I need to
this is a chance, yeah.
So then I came across this pattern, the Janie
Crow.
Yeah, so
Crowfoot, I think, yeah.
done all of them, but I haven't had the time yet to assemble.
Oh, let's see a few of those. So I know Janie Crow's patterns because I
Oh
bought
no,
one.
it's the blanket, the Eastern Jewels, but like a modern, like a new version of it. I think a Persian. I forget what it's
Is it
called.
Persian tiles or something like that?
Yes,
Is it? Yeah, yeah.
because
Because I've got the Frida Kahlo one, which is called
that's
Frida's Garden, but I've not started it yet. I've got all the wool, got the pattern, but not started.
so I bought the whole kit because I thought this was the second thing I did after the octopus, and so I've done all the hexagons and squares and triangles, but I haven't had the time because this I did about a year and a half ago, and then all the crazy went off, and I just didn't have the time anymore because the embroidery is what I do as a sort of day job, if you will, and that had
Well,
to take.
that's really impressive because you've literally gone for two of the hardest forms of crochet, amigurumi, which is your octopus, and then you've gone straight into a Janie Crow stroke crowfoot design, which is kind of like that's what most people kind of aspire to do because her designs are very 3D, aren't they? They're very, you know, they're very beautiful.
About it, the 3D-ness about crochet, I really love. And
Yeah.
I've downloaded, like, I bought tons and tons of patterns. So at the moment, everybody I know gets gifted crochet things. Because I was like, this is brilliant. I've got so many ideas for designing my own patterns, but I want to use lots of people's patterns to learn the different ways of writing them, you know?
Yeah.
Because I'm quite all right with freestyling at the moment. I've done for a friend of mine. She doesn't know this yet, but I've done something for her daughter, like also like a bookmark, which is a potato. But anyway, it's a mashed potato. But like I need to learn. I needed to become a bit more second nature to know what to write down. You know.
Yeah, crochet's more difficult. I don't know whether you knit as well, but crochet's harder to write patterns for, I think, to find the way of you know, because there's a lot of things that you do in crochet that are instinctive when you're doing it.
Yeah.
But to actually think about how to explain that to someone else is quite difficult, isn't it?
But I know this from having taught embroidery workshops and wrote patterns, because for me, it's so second nature. And then I have to have friends making the stuff that I write down for me first, because for me, I don't think about things like, oh, how do you put a knot in there? Or how do you anchor the thread? Or it's stuff that I do so automatically that I often forget to write it down. And so I guess it's the same with crochet. So I'm trying to do as many different people's patterns as possible just to practice to
one thing that somebody told me about knitting patterns, so I'm sure it applies across the board, but get a beginner to see if they understand what you do, and then they'll kind of get it then. At least you'll get it, I suppose.
And at the moment, it's great because there's so many things that I want to crochet for my baby. Like at the moment, I'm crocheting for him a solar system that I downloaded.
Oh my God, that's brilliant.
Like a little,
oh, that is so cool. What's she got? Is it a he or is she the cat?
She just caught thread that I had. Thread art is great when you have cats because it just goes like this. So I work on this. I work on the bookmarks. I always work on like a gazillion things at the same time.
How do you manage to fit it all in with having a baby as well? Because how old's your baby now?
5 months.
Wow.
Well, so the crochet, this is why I got so much back into crochet now, because after my controversy, I didn't have time for that at all. And you would think I would have less time with a baby now. But actually when I'm feeding him, when I'm breastfeeding him, like I can't embroider because I can't reach the canvas and I can't, but crochet, you can just sort of like sit back and do a bit of crochet. Basically. So I've got that in the living room. So whenever I sit down and feed him, I can do a little bit more.
So have you made any clothes for him yet? Have you crocheted any clothes? No. You're not. He's not. Does that not interest you or?
No.
No. Oh, that's weird. I thought that would be the next thing.
Yeah, it's a funny one because also with embroidery, people think that as well, or sewing or anything like clothes sewing and stuff. And I admire people that do that, but for some reason, I don't have patience for that.
Well,
I think my clothes is not very big for some bizarre reason.
Right. But I mean, not knowing you, just looking at what I've seen of your work, my interpretation of you though is that you are a proper artist.
Yeah.
Everything you're doing is about art rather than making pieces of material, isn't it? I can see that by the fact that you've gone for a Janie Crowfoot. That's a piece of art when it's done, isn't it? It's not a granny square blanket. It's I mean, we'll get onto your art now, because I don't want to just call it embroidery. I say just embroidery. It's art. It's amazing, some of the work that you do. Well, say all of the work you do. I shouldn't say some of. Sorry, say that again.
No, I didn't say I laughed.
Yeah, when I first saw it, the first one I saw of yours, I don't know whether I've got your website that we can show in a second if we need to find photos and things. But the one that blew me away probably isn't the one that blows everyone else away, but it was the hammer and the hand.
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorites.
Well, that one, when I saw it, it took me, when something, so I was like, wow. And I had to zoom in, I had to look really closely, and I was looking at every individual thread. Yeah. And what amazes me about what you're doing and how you do it is, to me, I mean, I've tried a bit of cross stitch in my time. That's it for me with sewing. But it's the way, and I'm naive, I don't know how you do it, but it's the way everything goes around the contours of the shape. So you can see the shape of the fingers, by the way you've laid the thread. It's not just like a flat plane. And the other thing, I'm an artist myself, a drawing artist. And one thing I know from experience is the hardest things to get right are hands and feet. And you've nailed that. You nailed it.
It's the funny thing is, people say that, I know, but I've always had a slight obsession with hands. So I find hands really easy because I look at hands all the time. I used to hate my hands because they're massive. Like, I've got really big lady hands. Like, when my husband bought me some, those fancy driver gloves.
With
the buttons here, the leather ones. And I really wanted one. And he had to buy them in like the men's section, like the small ones.
She-Hulk size.
Yeah, I used to hate them, but then actually now they make me money. In fact, they always have. So I've become a lot more forgiving, in fact, appreciating of my hands. But I used to hate them. So I used to, when there's something about that you don't like, then you look at it in everybody else. You look at other people. You know what I mean? Like, if you think, oh God,
like comparing.
Yeah. And so I've always looked at hands, and I always loved hands in general. And I always thought, oh, I've got such huge hands. And then now I think they're great. But so hands, I've stitched a lot. So I think it's just that. It's the same thing as repetition.
I'll see if I can try and find that particular picture. I've got it on a here we go. We'll start with this. That is amazing.
That's thanks.
Yeah, there's hands on there, isn't there? Yeah, so I don't know whether I can't really zoom in without losing what I'm doing, because I'm no good with this technology thing. But I'm hoping people looking can see it's what your work reminds me of, and it's obviously the nature of it. But like an artist, like, is it Sickert? Is it Walter Sickert? That kind of is it Impressionism, where they do dabs of paint, rather than smearing it in. So every sort of thread to me looks like a tiny dab of paint, and it and it moves. And sorry, I'm kind of fanboying here, but everything sort of like around the cheek, it moves around. It isn't just flat, I don't know. It just sort of takes my breath away when I see it, because I can see how. But maybe all embroidery is like this. I don't know. I'm just
it isn't. I think, and a lot of the times when you look at people doing portraits, I think what they misunderstand or don't do right, and same for hands, or any shape really, is just that every shape has some sort of natural flow. You've got lines in your face. If you follow your lines, you've got the laughing lines. It goes up, it goes down, and if you don't follow those in embroidery, it shows. So the most natural it will look if you follow the natural movement of your face, like or skin or hands, the way that it flows around. You've got lines all over your body if you look closely, and so that is what you can really work with in embroidery. So it really helps creating that 3D effect.
Did you go to art school?
No, I'm a hairdresser.
Wow. Oh yeah, you mentioned that before. So you never did life drawing or anything like that?
No, I did do that, but as a hobby, not.
Well, I was going to say, because I can see that about anatomy,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't
No,
mean it.
like I learned lots about art because I'm interested in it, not because I went to art school. Like I read
Right.
a gazillion books on art and I did do life drawing and stuff like that, but not in school. Like
And you can tell as well that you know how hair works,
yeah, well, yeah.
because often
This is
artists get hair
important.
wrong, don't they?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's a big advantage also in terms of hair color, you know? Like I think a lot of people they look at color and they go like, "Oh, I want brown hair." And they think then that's brown, that's one color, but actually
Yeah.
brown has a gazillion different shades of brown to make it actually look natural. In fact, the more
Yeah.
it's uniform, the less natural it will look.
Yeah, because you can see here how you've used, well, to me, in my eyes, it looks like a red or a burgundy in there, but a hair isn't red or burgundy, is it? It's like a
Well, mine
strawberry blonde color,
yeah,
as we would say.
yeah.
So yeah, oh, so the one, this is the one.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, other people will say probably prefer the one with the face because I think generally people like faces, don't they? But the reason I love this one is there's a number of reasons. One, the fact that you've embroidered a hammer. You know, how many people embroider hammers? You know, I just. But the
Yeah.
other thing is, I love what you've written here, and it says, and if it was fashioned to hit their hands blue, I think it says, it's what they do. And it's like, that's so true.
Yeah.
But then the other thing I wanted to ask you about this picture
Mhm.
is because I don't know how you've made this, but I'm
Mhm.
assuming that the background isn't part of, did you embroider this onto that background or is
No,
the
no, no.
background?
I made it float. So I've been
Oh,
experimenting with that for a while now, and this was one of the this is one of the earlier versions of that where I literally did like I put epoxy resin on the back of it after, but not straight away. So if anybody watches this and goes, "Oh, I'm going to try this," don't.
yeah.
Like don't without any proper preparation. Like I've put because it's fiber, so you can't just put liquid on it because it will seep through and it will fuck up your work basically. Like
So it comes on the front if you do it.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, and you don't want that. You wanna, maintain the threadness of the thread, like
Yeah.
um, so what I did to try and help this is, I used PVA glue, and I had a hairdryer, and I was literally brushing it on and drying it at the same time to create a layer. So I
Like a
did that
skin
for
almost, like,
yeah,
yeah.
because just PVA glue doesn't work either. I tried that, and that turns brown after a while if you leave it on for a while, and then that can interfere with the embroidery. Like I've been trying lots of different ways. Now I don't use any glue anymore at all. I just use pins and bugle beads to like create the distance to the background, and then I just bend the end of the
Ah,
pin. So it's what I wanted to do is have it float because
wow.
like I like to play with things that people don't think of when they think embroidery, like it floating, like the way that it's presented, that it's not in a hoop, but that it's actually sort
Yeah.
of
Well, you've
flat.
answered what my next question was gonna be,
Right.
which was because I looked really closely and couldn't work out how you'd done it. I was gonna say, "How did you get the shadows?" But
Yeah,
now I know they're real shadows, aren't they?
and real
Yeah.
shadows. Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
exactly.
But so what you do, you kind of so you're doing lots of different art forms here, aren't you? So you're doing, almost a painting with your embroidery, and it's an installation as well,
Yeah, yeah,
in
and
effect.
then it's in a
Yeah.
box frame. This whole piece is in a box frame, so that
Ah,
it's set away because, like, I don't want the glass to touch the embroidery either, so that it doesn't flatten it, and so it's set away from that still, so it's a bit like a shadow box kinda, like,
right.
big. I mean, it's a big piece, this.
And is
Um
the background a piece of material that you did, or is that just what
No,
you used as a background?
it's just what I used, like, before I did embroidery, I did those retex sculptures where I was sewing, 3D portraits out of recycled clothes, and from that period, I still have tons and tons of fabric, that I store and that I use in my pieces. Like, I just like recycling stuff. Like, I look for creative ways of using old clothes. This was somebody giving me their cut-offs of something, and I really like it. And in fact,
Right.
I've got sofa cushions that are made out of that too.
Well, what the thing about this as well is what I love about this. Sorry, I'm going to just keep going on about this picture because
Yeah.
I absolutely love this one. I really, genuinely do.
Oh,
Is that there's it's the not I don't well I'm going to say contradictions for want of a better word. You know, the fact that you've got this sort of, you know, very what's the word, very twee, almost old lady cottagey kind of background. Then you've got this, you know, about to be really violent thing about to happen with a hammer. I just look, you know, because other people would have just done that with a plain background, or do you know what I mean? Like, but adding that as a background has just created an entirely different dimension to the story of that piece. To me, I mean, obviously you're the artist, you know what you were intending, but to me, that I kind of read that as a almost. I mean, I'm knowing about your women's rights background and things like that. It's a bit, you know, like this is a woman in her home who, you know, probably has a very traditional life, you know, and then, you know, she's just, has she had enough? I don't know. But then why, when you write this at the bottom though, what is this? Well, I think I know what it is, but tell people what this means.
Well, so basically the interesting thing is, like, as I was doing this piece, because I didn't come up with that phrase. The phrase is from Erich Kästner, who's a poet and a writer, who wrote a poem which is called Modefrauen. I think it's German, or well, Austrian, but you know, Modefrauen. And I'd never actually listened to the whole thing, but this is a phrase that my grandma and my granddad always said to me. Like, I would come up as a kid, as a teenager, with like the latest ridiculous fashion, having spring hunger poking out of your ass cheeks, and you know, like, you know, and then they would say that. They'd say, you know, they'd just look at me and go, and if it was fashion to hit their nails blue, that's what they'd do, you know, like, but in German, like, I made it rhyme in English as well. It rhymes in German, right?
Well, that's not easy to do, is it? To translate rhyming as well.
It lends itself, but yeah.
How do you say it in German? How would it be in German?
German, it says, und wenn es Mode wäre, sich die Finger blau zu hauen, sie würden's tun, die Modefrauen. And but I'd never listened to the whole poem, and it's actually really quite, I mean, that guy did not like women, and well, it's against fashionistas, really, but he's talking about in Austrian society in like the 1920s or whatever, all those, you know, the fashionable ladies that would do the latest thing, whatever it was, you know, and then, but the way he talks about them is quite sexist. It was like, I wish I could just cut their tongues out and
wow.
It goes on. I'd never listened to the whole thing. But that thing always stuck in my head because they were so right. I mean, I did all the stupid stuff like teenagers do, you know, like you do the stupid stuff, and now for me, it has a complete different meaning because now I look at it from the whole, well, we'll get into that, but the whole controversy around me. And to me, it's the exact same sentiment. It's,
yeah.
You know,
well, we'll pin this and then come back to it because there's a lot of things we can. I could talk about this for 7 hours with you. Seriously, I could. So I'll just have another right now. This one. Sorry, I can't show the whole thing on the screen at the same time. I don't think so. We'll. Now, again, I can interpret this in lots and lots and lots of different ways. And I think this is probably something that, as an artist, you probably love and hate, isn't it? That people interpret things into your work.
No, I love it. I genuinely think when you create art, you can have an intention. In fact, oftentimes I don't even talk about what my intentions were because I believe that as soon as you release it into the world, that's whoever looks at it brings to the piece whatever they think it is to them, because that's what it is.
Yeah, because I started looking at this the other day and I was just thinking, to me it's very clever, very clever. I think some people might not like this image because obviously, you know, there's a lot of connotations here. But the first words that came into my head was Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
And then I started to think of sorry?
It is called natural habitat.
Right, I get it. Yeah. See, and then I started to think about Eve and apples and Adam and sex, and then obviously you've got the blood there, which presumably signifies menstrual blood. But then I started to think of like rivers of blood and what that meant. Then it's about I don't know. There's a lot of stuff to do with sex and whether it's consenting sex and whether, you know, even childbirth. I was thinking, is she, you know, is this woman giving birth at this moment in time? You know what? Because she's giving forth life, it seems to be, or that life is there, you know. And I don't know, there was just so much. And then the only thing I didn't understand, and so I'm glad I can talk to you about this, is what was under her feet here.
Oh, that's just pomegranate seeds.
I thought it was pomegranates, but I didn't.
This is because this picture here that you see is still from in progress. So this isn't the finished picture. So the finished picture, you'll see that it's pomegranate seeds.
Right. Sorry then. Yeah. So
that's all right.
pretend that bit's done, everyone. But yeah, it's just such a thought-provoking piece, and the fact that to me, she's made of a tree. You know, that the whole, the roots, and then the family trees, there's so many things that, sorry, I'm doing all the talking. You should be doing all the talking.
No, but this is what I like. That's what I'm saying. I don't really often talk that much about my work, because I do think that I think it's a useful thing that people bring their own interpretation to a piece of art. Like, there's so much art that I like or dislike or whatever, but it's because of what I bring to it. Because I can't know. In fact, I find it hilarious when people sort of stand in museums and stuff and sort of say that they think they know what it is. And it's like, do you though? Because I think it can also change and shift as you create the piece of art. Like, you can start with an intention and then it becomes sort of his own thing. But I genuinely think it's a good thing that people bring their own interpretation to it, because it's ultimately what it means to you. It doesn't really matter what I meant by it, really. Like, unless I want to make a political statement that's in your face and I need people to know. But genuinely, I quite like when people find their own interpretation.
Well, I suppose they're engaging with your work then, aren't they? They're almost having a dialogue with the piece of work rather than you, really, in a way, aren't they?
Yeah.
So now this is your website, so it might be easier if you sort of tell me where you think we should go to look at some more work. So
I think shop, you click on shop, because original artwork, I think you should be able to still see what, even if they were sold. These were the reject sculptures, but if you scroll further down, I think all the stuff is still on there. See there.
There it is. Wow.
So
that's the one we just. So let's have a quick look at the pomegranate bit at the bottom. Oh.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, it's finished now, isn't it? Yeah, I can see. Yeah, you can tell the pomegranates now, because I was just thinking you were making some kind of a statement by not finishing it or something. This is a danger, isn't it, of trying to read it
at the time of that interview, I think it was. But yeah, like if you scroll down, there's lots of
self-portraits as well. Excellent.
Yeah.
And is that a piece of the other picture, or is that a separate thing of its own?
What do you mean?
I'm just wondering if this wasn't part of the woman's legs picture. Is
no, this is a piece which I've always loved. It's like it says on the side. I did that when I was a kid. Like, I did the drawing of it. We had this in school in Germany when we were children, in art lesson, where you would have a famous piece of art and you cut out, like you cut out a piece, and then you finish the rest around it, like around the edges, to sort of, and this is what I did then, and I've always liked it. It's literally just a patch of grass, and that's also what it's called, a great piece of turf, I think.
That reminds me of years ago, my gran used to have, it was a really horrible thing, really, actually, but it fascinated me for some reason. As you were coming down the stairs in her house, at the bottom on the wall, there was a plate from Spain, and it was really badly done, but it was a picture of flamenco dancers, a woman in red, and it was a photograph, but then whoever had done it had painted out, outwards, but it was so badly done. And I was obsessed with this for some reason. And when I was at art school, I did a whole series of photographs where I painted things coming out. So I know what you're getting at with that. And there's something quite cool about that, isn't there?
Yeah, but it was this little piece of the bigger picture, and I just fancied embroidering it, and I just loved the English translation, a great piece of turf, seeing that.
So how big is this? How big is the actual embroidery piece?
This is just a small. It's tiny, actually. It's like.
Is it about the size of a coaster, like what you'd put?
Yeah. This one is.
It's really nice. How do I go back now? So let's. This is my favorite one.
Yeah.
I've already shown that. I won't show it again because I've already shown it. Has that one sold out?
Yeah, these are all gone.
Oh, right. Here we go. Getting notorious now.
Yeah.
Is there... I'll show that one because it's a bit clear, isn't it? So this is JK, isn't it? JK Rowling. So maybe you could tell us why you did this one.
Oh, this was because this was sort of, I did this when she wrote her essay in the whole gender war situation, which was like about a year after I wrote mine, actually. Right. And I just completely admire her for having done that, because she didn't have to do that. She could have just sat back with her billions and not care, but she really does care. Because this is the hilarious thing. People seem to think that she, you know, has nothing better to do, but it's like that is completely understating what it means to speak up in this day and age. So no, I completely admire her. And this was something that she said in a tweet. And so, yeah, I just felt compelled. I kind of did it for myself initially, but then when I came back into the headlines, everything in my shop just got grabbed up. So I put it up there because,
so being notorious was actually quite lucrative for you.
Oh, incredibly lucrative. Yeah, we've got a great deposit house now. It's great.
We'll have to get into that now. So what happened? What happened to you?
Well, I mean, so this is the thing.
I'll just take this off for a second while we talk.
I wrote a thing. Well, actually, if you go back to it and you go back into the shop, it's easier to explain this. So you go
if I go back.
Yeah, just backwards.
Yeah.
And the piece above it. Above.
This one?
That. Yes. I wrote a blog in 2019 and I stitched this, and it's called Somewhere Over the Rainbow, Something Went Terribly Wrong. Right. So this was the initial coming out, if you will, as sane thinking person. Yeah, basically I sort of slowly observed what was happening around me. At the time I was working in Soho Theatre, and I had a little hair salon there for 2 days a week in their cabaret dressing room, and people around me started to sound a lot more nuts by the day, it felt like.
Wow.
And it was interesting because I've sort of been in the, you know, in that theater world and in the fetish scene for many years, and when you're in it, it's the water you swim in, so it's really difficult to see it unless you're really engaged with it. So I was very much lip femmy, live and let live, porn is great, everything is so blah blah, all that bullshit. And so, sorry, I haven't even asked if I can swear, but I swear a lot.
You can. You can swear. If people don't like it, they'll just have to not listen.
Well, that, and also I find it really difficult to censor myself. I'm not going to do that with my son either. But so, yeah, like, basically people around me started to sound a bit nuts, and I started to talk to them about it and kind of go, what do you know, someone went like, oh, you know, with my wedding, I had to uninvite an old friend because she sounded really transphobic. I'm like, oh, well, that's a shame. Thinking, well, that's not nice. You know, why would you be transphobic? And then we started talking more about it. And then she told me what she meant by that. Because I thought she'd be like, I hate trans people kind of thing, you know? Like,
yeah.
You know, and she's like, oh, no. And she was saying, blah, 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 you know, trans women aren't women. I was like, well, they're not. At the time, because everybody sort of still gave me the benefit of the doubt, because I hadn't made my mind up about it either. Like, not that I hadn't made my mind up. It was completely logical to me that a man isn't a woman, regardless of what he says. But what I mean by haven't made my mind up, I always thought, oh, well, whatever. What's it to me?
Live and let live. Just,
I hadn't followed it. And then also I have a dad who's into cross-dressing and stuff like that. So it just really didn't, you know, it just wasn't something on my radar, even though it was so in front of me. Retrospectively, I can see that. But yeah, so then it kind of got more and more intense. People started throwing around pronouns. I'm like, what the heck is that? There was someone at the theater who was at the time kind of then becoming non-binary and stuff. And so I was like, you know, how does that work? For example, if you go to Germany, because it's a really gendered language, right?
Yeah.
How would you do that there? And he's like, I haven't really thought about it. No. What does it even mean? Like, what? And so it just got weirder and weirder. And I just kept questioning it and just kept running against, you know, dogma. the more I questioned it, and I thought, what the heck is going on, and why have I only seen this now? Because now, retrospectively, I see this has been going on for a lot longer, actually. But I
It's
was
been a slow creep, hasn't it?
yeah, but
Yeah.
all of a sudden it just exploded, and I think it had a lot to do actually with the fact that in I think 2018, it had been downgraded in the DMS-5 from like a mental illness to and this is like being transgender to being under sexual health or something. So they're trying to depathologize it while still keeping it in the DSM-5 because they want the insurances to pay for it, right? So it's a complete, it's just a clusterfuck. It's just nonsense. But I think in terms of timing, the way that I look at it now is that has a lot to do with it exploding all of a sudden everywhere, because now they can turn around and go like, look, it's not a mental illness. I'm like, well,
yeah.
your mind is at war with your body. What would you call that? You know, it's hilarious that we've come from let's not stigmatize people with depression and mental illness in general to, oh, let's celebrate this. And also like, how dare you mention that this could be anything to do with the mind because you're trying to pathologize this. And it's like, well, it's an issue. If you feel compelled to chop off your body or put some fake breasts on, then what if not a mental condition would you call it, you know?
Yeah, it's that, you know, when they say they're born in the wrong body, my
Well,
response to that is, are you sure it's your body that's wrong?
Yeah.
You know, maybe your body's actually right and correct, which it is, because it's your body, it's what you've got, isn't it?
Exactly.
Nobody's born in the wrong body, you're just born in your body.
Exactly. Yeah, also, I mean, you know, they haven't thought it through, because what about disabled people? What about anybody that's not, you know? But anyway, so like I started questioning this more and more. It started to become more and more ludicrous. I realized the more I looked into it, how sexist it is, how ageist it is, because there was a lot of older feminists in particular who've been ringing the alarm bells for a long time, and they've just been dismissed. And people are like, "Well, the feminists, I've never heard anybody talking about it." It's like, because
a lot of lesbians as well, a lot of older lesbians.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's because a lot of now you see a lot of kind of right-wing men who go like, oh, why aren't the feminists saying anything? Listen, you have a deaf spot in your ears for older feminist lesbians. So that's why that is why you haven't heard what's been going on, right? But this has been going on for a while. They've been taking a lot of slack. They've been harassed. They've had, you know, Julie Bindel had in 2009. She's a lesbian journalist. Yep. They had she had a water bottle thrown at her at a live event, you know. So for saying, look, you know, men aren't women. Doesn't really matter how you call yourself.
I think, to me, like when you mentioned Julie Bindel, I mean, I know who she is, being in Britain. People in America probably won't know who she is. And I think part of the issue here is about what you're saying is that people remember things they didn't like that feminists perhaps said in the 70s and 80s that they didn't agree with. And rather than looking at what the issue is that they're talking about today, they're remembering that they didn't like what they said all that time ago, and then they're not listening anymore.
But I think that you can broaden that to just women. You know, I'm aware that feminism is just as dogmatic as any other sort of movement, if you want. You know, like you can go very far in all directions. But the reality is that it's not just what they said in the 70s and 80s, because you go further back in history, they were called suffragettes. You know, they didn't like what they had to say. If you go to the 70s and 80s, it's the feminists, and if you go to the 90s, it's the feminazis. It's the, like, there's always a word, you know. So there is something inherent there when women complain about things. I find that hilarious when you have arguments like that and people go like, oh, you know, women are so emotional. I'm like, it's hilarious, because what do you call it when men go on a raging, rampant, you know, like politicians, they go to war? What do you call that? Is that not emotional? How is that?
No, that's logical.
I think there's an inherent, there is something about a woman that doesn't toe the line, that speaks up, that kind of goes, regardless of whether you agree with them or not. Because, you know, I don't know if you're aware of Meghan Murphy. You know, she's
remind me, I'm not sure.
She runs a website called Feminist Current, and she was very left, but she spoke up, and she's Canadian. She spoke up in 2016, went to the government to like stop this legislation for self-ID. when Jordan Peterson spoke up, she did too, but she wasn't as covered because at the time she wasn't that well known yet. But she's actually been on Joe Rogan now twice too. And so, but the thing about her, I really like her. She's very free thinking, and she has said things before that have rubbed feminists the wrong way, but she's a writer and she's a thinker, and she questions everything and doesn't just take it on face value. And just because it's a feminist thing, or that's what feminists think as a whole, that I don't buy into that anyway. Like the whole, I consider myself a feminist, but that doesn't mean that I agree with every feminist on every issue. That's nonsense. That's just...
Yeah, because I think there's a portrayal, isn't there, that many, if somebody asked me describe a feminist, I would probably say somebody with blue hair, somebody who's really woke, whereas now that isn't the case, is it? It's clearly not the case anymore.
No,
it's almost like there's a big divide there, isn't there?
I know that you've spoken to Birdie before, and I know that Birdie doesn't consider herself a feminist, but it's like I do consider myself a feminist because everything else would just not make sense being a woman in this situation. Like, especially when you look at gender ideology, it's not just anti-free speech, but it's deeply sexist because it goes predominantly in one direction, which is against females, much more than it goes in the other direction. It's also there because I had that conversation the other day about drag queens, where I said I have an issue with drag queens much, much more than with drag kings, because as much as drag kings also take the piss out of the stereotype, it doesn't perpetuate a status quo. Where drag queens do. They don't do anything to broaden the bandwidth of what we see as acceptable for men to dress up like. No, they take the piss out of the stereotypes of women. The issue is that those stereotypes are really often still across the world expected of women, to adhere to. Like, I had the conversation with my brother where he was like, oh, I like it when women don't wear makeup. And I'm like, you're full of shit, like, basically, because what you like is if a woman has just enough makeup to make her look pretty, but not over the top. But
not like a whore, in inverted commas.
Exactly. So you have to straddle that really fine line as a woman all the time. Because if I don't wear makeup at all, the amount of times that I get, oh, you look really tired. I'm like, no, that's my face. That's how I look when I don't wear that little bit of makeup, So no. And I had the same thing years ago when I did Weight Watchers and I lost a lot of weight. And people went like, oh, wow, you look so hot and blah, but don't lose any more weight. So I'm like, have I hit that tiny fine margin of... well, I didn't enjoy it anyway because suddenly everybody had an opinion on my appearance, and said so, which really wasn't comfortable because I was like,
I would argue, though, that isn't just in the female realm, because, I mean, I'm overweight. I've done Slimming World in the past, and at one point in my life, I lost about 6.5 stone, which I've now put back on. And people said exactly the same thing to me. Oh, you look great now, but don't lose any more. Don't put any back on.
Yeah,
so it does.
That is true, but I think I don't know, just sort of, I mean, I guess that's anecdotal, but I would argue that my anecdotal evidence is proof of no, but I do think that men with more weight, like, honestly, if I look around my friend circle, the way that women respond to men that are overweight is a lot more generous than the other way around, especially the older you get. So I think an overweight man is much more socially acceptable than an overweight woman. Like, immediately.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Yeah, I agree with you there. Yeah.
And so so I'm not saying this doesn't exist, but for example, also like the whole beauty industry for men before the 2000s, I've done a whole thing about this a while ago, but before the 2000s was virtually non-existent, like money-wise, like, and now you've got everything because the industry, that's capitalist drive, right? So they saw there's a market, there's money to be made. So, and it's the same with the gender nonsense, because now they can market all the, oh, look here, non-binary clothes. Like, what the fuck is that? That's what we used to wear in the 90s. But anything someone can spin something on and see that they can make money out of it. And usually that's down to insecurity. So if somebody would manage to make men feel insecure about how they look, and then make money out of it, because look here, we can fix it, then that's what they will do. And I think that's what we're facing now. But I do think, because if you look back to the 60s, women had to sort of define themselves by how they look, because they weren't, your job was to find a husband who earns a lot of money and looks after you. So your appearance was part of your, when people say, oh, she's a gold digger. Yes, because that's how women were raised for a long time. You know, like you were raised to make sure that you're pretty, that you have just enough in your brain to like have a nice little conversation at a cocktail party. But beyond that, you're going to be a mother and a housewife kind of thing. You know, like your job to find.
Was it the 50s or the 60s? It might have even been the 60s where they had, you know, the women's magazines where it was, you know, make sure you look, you know, pretty, or put your makeup on before your husband comes home from work, you know, while the dinner's on the table and whatever.
And I read about an artist called Jan Hayworth. She is Peter Blake's, I think, ex-wife. Something like that. You know, there's this Beatles cover, Sgt. Pepper. And she designed it together with him, except most people have never heard of her. And they won like a Grammy or something for not a Grammy, like some big
award.
Yeah. And most people don't know this. She's a textile artist, right? And she went in the 60s or 70s or whatever. She went to the Royal Academy, hilariously. And she got told that female students are really only there to sort of entertain the male students.
What?
Like, they didn't really know what she wanted to study. Like, I read about her and I was like, what the hell? And so this is the thing that people forget, that historically, this is all not really very long ago. And we've just got collective amnesia and just all pretend that women are the same as men, which, well, they're obviously not, but also that they're being treated the same in society, which they're not. I mean, there's all sorts of things. Anyway, long story short, I do consider myself a feminist. I think there's so many things that really, you know, the fact that 3 women are being killed in the UK per week. That's outrageous. And yet we don't really talk about it much because currently there's all these idiotic politicians who go, oh, what is a woman? You know, it's like,
well, when you say 3 women a week, is this sort of domestic violence or just generally? Or
no, domestic violence.
Because what some people would say on the flip side of that is they would say, well, how many men are being killed per week? So, and then they would compare
but how many of those men are being killed by women? Those women are being killed by men predominantly. So
you know, it's a bit like a conversation I had yesterday where we were talking about race and murder and sort of saying more white people are more likely to be killed by white people, black people are more likely to be killed by black people, but when it comes to crossing over, more white people are killed by black people than black people killed by white people, even though the actual data is quite small in relation to that. So I get what you're saying is that more men die, but they die at men's hands probably mostly, and the women that die mostly die at men's hands. I get what you're saying.
Exactly. So that's the issue really, because like if you turn the thing, because a lot of the times people go, oh yeah, but women perpetuate domestic violence too, and I'm like, look at the stats. They do. I'm not saying they don't, and it's definitely something like domestic violence is horrible regardless who's affected. You know, men do it to men, like, you know, gay men do it to gay men, and all the variations that you want. The reality though is that if you flip it around, it's not like 3 men die a week, but at the hand of their intimate partner.
I think I mean it's quite just to be, you know, to throw this in to sort of try and balance it a little bit. It's quite rife in the lesbian community as well. You know, lesbians, there's a lot of domestic violence as well. But the thing I suppose brings us into the gender thing is that the difference when you've got female and male domestic violence is that men are generally, on the whole, larger, more aggressive, stronger. Not always, obviously, there's always exceptions.
Of course.
Yeah, and this is the issue that brings us right into the gender thing, especially with things like women's sports and things like that. You know, because my argument there is that, you know, until women that have transitioned into men, you know, I'm saying all this in inverted commas, until they're winning races and beating men in boxing matches, you know, you can't say there's an equal playing field by having men who are now women competing against women. You know, they've had the advantage of testosterone through their body, you know, growing through puberty, which changes everything in your body at that point, you know. I mean, you know more about this than I do because this is your realm, isn't it?
Do you know what? Can I just quickly grab my child? Because I think I need
of course. What I'll do while you're doing that, I'll just show some of your other images then.
Do that. I'm just going to get him here so I can put them on.
Okay. So let's have another look at some of Jess's work here. This is quite a nice one as well. This is the way she does hands is just amazing to me. You know, you can see all of the creases there in the hand, and she's done that by the direction of the yarn, I think. Well, I say yarn, it's thread, isn't it? And everything she does looks like what it's supposed to be. So it looks like metal scissors, even though it's using the same material as the hand has been made from. She's a brilliant artist, absolutely brilliant. But one thing, let's have a look. What else can we look at? Let's have another look at the look at these embroidery patches. So these are things that she sells. So they're about £12, £11, and I think you sew them. I don't know whether you sew them or you iron them on. Oh, is this the baby?
Yeah.
What's he called?
Finn.
Ah, cool. F-I-double-N or F-I-N?
Oh, F-Y-N.
Oh.
Because we couldn't agree. I wanted F-I-N. Husband said no, because that's like the end. Sorry, I'm just going to have to put my boob in his face.
Oh, so like finish. Finny. Yeah, I see. Yeah.
And hello. Yeah. He's ignoring the boob.
Well, this is a first. I don't think we've had this before. Yeah, I was just talking about your they're iron on. I was just saying I don't know whether you iron them on or whether you saw what it actually says in big letters, iron on. I bet you sell a lot of these, don't you?
Oh yeah, especially after the controversy that we still haven't talked about.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
started, but basically in 2019 I wrote then, after realizing that things have gone a bit weird. I wrote a blog of like 5,000 words. Like I was saying earlier, that embroidery came alongside it. Hello, sir. And no, it's not the boob. He just wants to hang out. Yeah, and so I wrote that. And fortunately, my husband used to be an editor, and he edited it about 5 times because he was like, "That's too angry. That like you're gonna get so much shit for this already, so you need to tone it down a little bit because like it needs to really." Because once I sort of realized what was going on, I got really angry. I'm like, "What the hell is this? Like crazy!" And yeah, and then he edited it. This was quite the thing for our relationship as well. It's like, because I'm quite opinionated, as you might be able to tell. And then, someone has to tell you with love that no way, you can't do that. But no, I'm glad he did. And the final version was still 5,000 words. Imagine what the first one was like. It's like 7,500 words.
And that's a lot for an article, isn't it? That's not a short article, is
and
it?
Also, I never really write with my artwork. I never really try and explain anything. I never really, but this I felt I need to, because this is too important, And I guess this was the same thing with J.K. Rowling, who felt compelled to really compassionately lay down her opinion. And I did that, and so did she. But then you quickly realize, once you enter the gender wars, if you will, it doesn't really matter whether you say something really outrageous or something really nice. As soon as people put a target on your back, you can say whatever,
and they twist everything then. Everything that you say after gets twisted, doesn't it?
And the way that I wrote it really was like very, I don't want to be misinterpreted. So here is my opinions. This is what my view is, blah, 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 blah. And oh my God, I posted it in August 2019. By November 2019, I had to leave Soho Theatre because the pressure on them mounted was so big, because 250,000 people had read my blog at that point. Because I caused basically a transphobic rapture in the embroidery community.
A tidal wave.
Yeah, this is what someone said. It was hilarious. So people who had bought my work, the little hoops that I'd done back in the past, they would suddenly go like, "I'm donating this and the money will go to the trans charity and blah, blah, blah." And I thought, oh my God, I thought I knew what was coming my way. I had no idea. This was 2019, and I've got a pretty thick skin, but that was pretty rough. I mean, it really was, because at the time, like now I'm really well connected to a lot of people who had to go through the same thing, and I was able to help people, like counsel people through it as they were going through it, or just before, like Rosie Kay or Millie Hill, like people who spoke up within their fields, Rosie Kay within dancing, Millie Hill within birth work and stuff. But there wasn't really anyone who could have told me how hideous this was going to be. And it's a really interesting feeling because it feels really like medieval, it's like people walk you through the online street, if you will, and go shame, 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 like,
and try and burn you as a witch, literally. They want you dead, don't they? That's the thing. They don't just want to destroy you, they want you gone.
They want you just gone. Exactly. That's how it felt. And it felt really visceral, and it just felt like someone's punching me in the gut repeatedly, constantly, even though I knew better than to take it personally. But I think there's something so primal about being outcasted from a group that you respond to whether you want to or not. And I just felt sick for a couple of weeks. And
were some of these people actual friends that you knew as well?
Oh yeah.
Because that's the hardest, isn't it? I think when it's people know.
Actual friends, I'd rather say acquaintances. My actual friends, they were part of me writing this thing all the way. Because I would give it to them to feedback to me. No, I haven't lost people that I would call my friends at all, and I'm very fortunate in that. I know that, because I know people have lost friends. I haven't. No, I've lost acquaintances that obviously didn't matter in the first place. But no, this was almost more difficult, because I was like, lots of people knew me within the embroidery world, if you will, and then kind of it was a proper witch hunt. And I have so many screenshots. I'm going to make art out of that one day, of all the people that would literally put like work of mine up with Jess De Wahls is cancelled, transphobic, cunt, and whatever they called me. Like, I had so many. And then the worst one, which I find even worse than the name calling, is the emotional blackmail, as if someone's your best buddy and goes, listen, Jess, I know you don't mean it that way, and let me explain to you. It's like, get in the bin. I wrote 5,000 words. I know exactly what I'm talking about, you twat. Like, as if you didn't know. And I'm like, no, I know men can't be women. And I will say that. And I will not have 1984, style put on
how many fingers.
But that's how it felt. So it was either being the full on, oh, you're horrible, you're this, that, and the other, you want all trans people dealt with. It's just the biggest nonsense ever. To the emotional blackmail type. Oh, but Jess, and let me appeal to you. And I'm like, just...
Oh, yeah, you're misguided. I know more than you do. Let me teach you.
Let me bring you back to the path of the righteous. So this was in 2019. And then I couldn't do any collaborations with anyone anymore. Because I had this little anti-fan club who would follow my every step online and would sabotage any collaboration I would do. So immediately jump on it and go like, oh, did you not know she's a TERF? She's transphobic. She's this, she's that. So to the extent, because they knew they can't get to me, because I'm like, they were like, oh, you need to apologize. I'm like, fuck off. I don't know. There's nothing to apologize for. But then they wouldn't go for me. They would go for whoever I work with. And that's horrible, because
I've got a friend, and they wrote to his employer. And said, do you know he is associated? It's like the evil.
They didn't write to them. They just tagged everyone online. So then it really sort of influenced my work in the sense that I went underground. Like, fortunately, it turns out there's a lot of people with, relatively deep pockets who like to support people like me, who then became private commissioners, and then so... And actually, I then became a full-time textile artist, because I didn't then work.
Can you say whether JK has ever bought anything?
Yeah.
She has.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so good.
But yeah, I mean, there's something gonna come out later this year about that. But yeah, but it wasn't just her. There were quite a few people who suddenly reached out to me privately, who I also didn't name, just because I didn't, why would you want to throw anybody to the sharks? But no, it actually enabled me to just become full-time, textile artist, really. But in my sort of feminist work, what I've always liked to do, because as an artist, you notoriously don't have money. I do now, thanks to all these idiots, but I didn't. I really didn't. You know, hairdressing, art is a great combination.
So if this hadn't happened, if you hadn't been cancelled, where do you think you would be now?
Oh, I mean, I would, you know, I don't think there is where would you be in hadn't because it happened, because things happen, and that's how it is.
Yeah.
But no, I think I would still be heading in the same directions, because my work speaks for itself, and the longer you create something, the more you kind of, you know, you build a following. But this obviously exponentially changed it. And last year I got invited, last year, oh god, I'm missing times. Like, I will cover the Royal Academy in a minute, but I got invited last year by David Mack, who's a Royal Academician who was so pissed off about what happened to me the year before. And he invited me, and he said to me when we had the initial chat, that he loves my work, and he knows, being an artist, a well-known artist, that every artist, essentially what you need isn't just the talent, or, you know, you need luck. You know, you need luck, because I know a lot of really talented people, but unless you are at the right time, at the right place, the right person buys your work, sees your work.
You either have to have connections, don't you, or you just
And so he's like, I really want to give you a leg up, you know. And so he invited me to be part of the summer exhibition last year, but after everything happened. But no, I mean, they definitely exponentially increased the speed at which I started to make this a full-time, you know, job. That now will enable me to probably buy a house.
You should name it after them. What could you call it? Your house.
This is the thing. So anyway, to draw it back to, so I wrote the thing. Then I had this little anti-fan club that followed my every step. And then I became much more cautious. So I wouldn't share things online, who I supplied my patches to, or, you know, who were my stockers and stuff like that. And then I went to a birthday of a friend of mine, got rather drunk, and wasn't cautious enough. And on my Patreon shared that I had just supplied the Royal Academy again with my patches yesterday. It was just like a side note. Turns out some absolute idiot became a patron of mine to spy on me.
I've had that.
Yeah, ridiculous. I mean, pays money to get info, and then must have posted that online, and then it went quite big without my knowing, because I had blocked everyone. Like, I had blocked most people who do my head in, so I didn't know that this, you know, avalanche was mounting against me already again. I was in the garden working on a commission, you know.
Happy. Just mind your own business.
Yes. And then it all completely blew up. And I mean, completely blew up, because I was so used to being cancelled that I didn't even take this serious for what it was going to become. Because I just thought, oh, well, here we go. There's another, you know, stockists that I lose. What gives, you know?
So were they selling these patches that we've got on the screen?
They were selling some of my flower patches in their shop, but already for like a year and a half, right? It's just that I've never talked about it. I've never promoted it online, because I was very aware that there's also a lot of jealousy, you know. Like, it's interesting when you look at the people that try and rip you down. They usually work in the same field, and they're usually a lot shitter than you. So, you know. And that's what I mean. It's hilarious. Like, there's one in particular who tried to like rally all her followers. She still has a crack at me. It's hilarious. But anyway, she was sort of responsible for then complaining, or getting people to complain to the Royal Academy. So I got an email from the Royal Academy saying, oh, we had complaints, blah, 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 blah. It blew up to the extent that the Royal Academy, instead of like keeping this private between us, they apologized to their 500,000 followers on Instagram, saying that they will not stock this transphobic artist anymore. And thanks for pointing out. And I was like, so up until that point, I tried to keep it out of the limelight, because I had no interest in blowing this up, or, you know, make a fuss out of it. But they did. But when I say they, I think it was their social media guy, which in a lot of big companies is a big problem, because they think they are God, because they hold the, you know. Anyway, he no longer works for them, which is hilarious, because what then happened was, up until that point, I had lots of people contacting me that know me and went like, do you want us to also write to the Royal Academy? You just kind of give a counter, you know, because I make no secret out of what my views are. Like, they were very well known, and they're on my website. So I emailed them back. I'm like, listen, this is what I wrote. You should know this, because it's on my website. You contacted me to become my stockist, you should make your homework. I mean, all it takes is a quick Google search to figure out what the hell I said, you know. And I stand by it. There's nothing that I wrote that I regret, none. And so, yeah, but then basically they did this over social media, and I just looked at it and went, well, fuck. Took a screenshot of that because I took a screenshot of that idiotic embroiderer woman who shared it with her followers, kind of going, oh, yay, we won, blah, blah, blah. So I took a screenshot, posted it on Twitter, felt quite deflated, and just said, that's where we're at. And then put social media to the side. And then I woke up the next morning to the entire UK press in my inbox, essentially.
Wow.
And, oh, do you want to talk about this? Do you want to, you know? And it completely blew up because what I underestimated was that it is the Royal Academy, you know, like it's not any.
Yeah, it's a big deal, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a big deal. Yeah. And it was also beyond just a feminist issue. It was suddenly a free speech issue, you know, and a kind of like, are we going to censor people's thoughts now? Because let's face it, the pictures that you've got on your screen right now with the fuck ovaries and stuff, you know, some people could find that offensive. That's not what they stocked. They stocked my flower patches, which are exactly that. And,
yeah.
You know, they have nothing to do with any of my sort of political work, if you will. So, you know, and yeah, and so it was ridiculous. It was all about me and who I am and what I think, and nothing to do with my actual work, you know, which is, yeah, it was ridiculous. So then it completely blew up. Like within a few days, it was on every major newspaper front page, like completely crazy in the UK. And suddenly my online shop went completely mental. Like I sold an insane amount of stock. You know, I had to engage people to help me for the next 3 months to fulfill orders because it was impossible.
Wow.
Yeah, sold all the originals, everything. It was completely crazy. And I didn't really want to leave the house for 4 weeks because at the time I still had the red hair because I hadn't been pregnant yet. And so very recognizable, you know, and it felt genuinely really uncomfortable just leaving the front door because my face was everywhere, and it was just, and I realized really quickly that the press was completely on my side, which was great because you don't know what's going to happen when you deal with the press.
That's unusual, isn't it? Because normally it's
very
horror
unusual,
stories, isn't it?
Because it was about free speech. And so for them, of course, that's a really important thing, you know, especially when you have people there who are a little bit older who understand what journalism actually is.
Yeah.
That it's not just about opinions, but actually about, you know, what's going on. And yeah, no, so they were very on my side. And so I realized this really quickly, and I thought, well, they're handing me a megaphone, I'll bloody well take it.
Yeah.
And I spoke to anybody that wanted to speak to me, like anyone, like any podcast, any video, anything. Like I was on Radio 4 in the morning, you know, breakfast twice, twice in most places, and newspapers as well, because the Royal Academy basically completely shut down communications. So they kind of went completely silent treatment, which most of the journalists I spoke to, they were like, never heard that. Their press office just went down. They just shut. No information in, no information out. I had something like 16,000 emails in my inbox of enraged people who, and this was the other thing, I realized that they were going to give in. It's just a question of time, because the amount of people that started to speak with their wallet and canceled their membership and copied me into the emails where they said, listen, you know, I've been a friend of the Academy for a long time, but this is absolutely outrageous and I will cancel my membership, you know. And so there were thousands. And I thought, well, this is a question of time until they turn around, not a question of whether or not, you know, because eventually money speaks too, you know, sadly, but let's face it.
Yeah, it speaks louder than, you know, conviction, doesn't it?
So for the longest time, every time I spoke to someone, and when they were saying, what do you want? You know, what's your preferred result? And I was like, well, an apology. I want an apology. Because I had no desire to take them to court or anything like that. But I was like, I want an apology. And then I got an apology. So I got a phone call from the chief, who I then eventually met as well. But like, yeah, I got an apology.
Wow.
They reinstated the patches, and then I got contacted by David. I got contacted by, he was the only Royal Academician actually who contacted me. Yeah, which was a bit shameful, and I wrote about it afterwards. But he contacted me. He was outraged about it. He was like, "This is absolutely embarrassing, and I'm so sorry." And then he, later in the year, after all of that had happened, he contacted me again saying like he still feels really shit about it, and he really wants to invite me because he was at the jury. He was part of the jury of the summer exhibition, and they have the prerogative to invite a couple of artists that don't have to apply for the summer exhibition. And he's like, and I really want you to be one of them. And it's like, great, how big can I go? And it hang in an amazing spot. And so, yeah, I had a massive embroidery at the summer exhibition last year.
Wow. I mean, what's amazing about this story, the first thing is, one, you didn't apologize. And that's quite unusual because normally people crumble, don't they, when they're faced with that.
I hate that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that is where all hell breaks loose because an apology is never enough. They'll come for your blood at that point, won't they? And the fact that you got an apology from them is amazing.
No, it was a big deal. It was a really big deal. Which I realized it would be a much bigger deal than going to court or doing anything like that. I was like, no, I want them to admit that what they did was wrong. And it was wrong. It was completely wrong.
Yeah, because if you went to court, there would still be some people that would think that what they did was right, even though you won at court or whatever. If you did, there would still be people. Whereas now they've apologized, so it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, no, it was really important to me. And they did. And I mean, it was such a media circus. It was completely ridiculous. But what it did do, I think, it was like a monsoon rain, where the 2 years before, after I had written my piece, it was impactful enough in my sort of smallish world, like, because I was well known within embroidery circles, because it's a very particular kind of thing, isn't it? Textile art is kind of small worldwide in comparison. But that wasn't loud enough in order to sort of make me a bit more bulletproof. But this was, because now, like, people realize the more they kicked off a stink, the more I sold. And that's the worst that could have happened. They really didn't want that. Because every time I went on some show, I'd be like, yeah, it's great. I'm selling like crazy, like hot. And I did. I mean, it was
well, who was it that said success is the best revenge, isn't it?
Honestly. And I'm thanking them because idiots. I mean, but I think so I thought when I got invited to the summer exhibition that there's going to be some outrage there. And lo and behold, it really was kept to a total minimum, because I think they realized that I'm not going to shut up, number one, and number two, that I'm going to completely out them for the idiots that they are, because usually it's just strength in numbers, right? So they kick up a fuss when they know lots of people kick up a fuss. But I will take every single asshole and broadcast that on my Instagram.
So just going back to the article that sort of, raised all the issue with them in the first place, was it literally you saying that men can't become women? Is that what the crux of that article was? Or was it something else?
Very long thing. It talks about everything, how I think that whole ideology is very sexist, that even though I can understand why people would want to, like do certain things, that it doesn't make it so that you cannot change sex. If we ignore sex, we ignore sexism. Because if we say that we don't know what a woman is, then we can't pinpoint what the issue here is. What is then things like gender pay gap? What is, domestic violence that is predominant? All those issues that, or abortion issues. If we say nonsense like men can get pregnant, they cannot.
Well, the thing I find quite interesting. I mean, we have different views on aspects of feminism and so on, but the thing is, nobody has ever been saying what is a man.
Exactly.
That question, I don't think I've ever heard anybody question what a man is.
No, of course not.
So, and it's like, why women? Why?
No, but the NHS, it would remove all reference to women and call us birthing buddies and just really horrible.
Menstruators, breastfeeders. Oh no, chest feeders, isn't it? You can't say breast anymore.
But for men, when you look at for prostate cancer and stuff like that, it's all men. It's all men, because there's no issue with men, and there's no issue with trans men in sport, because there's no freaking way that a woman will beat a man like a major
Well,
athlete in their
it's
field.
interesting, isn't it? That so basically, what's happening is when a woman transitions, she's still a woman, even though she's presenting as a man, or he is presenting. I don't know the best way to describe that. So there's still, even though they will now have testosterone, they will still have a lot of the traits that they had when they were, a woman.
Yeah.
And the same goes the other way. So men that become women, become, I'm going to put that in inverted commas, they're still going to be more aggressive, more forthright, more, dominant, because that is a very male pattern,
But also
isn't it?
physically, if you look at it. I mean, physically, especially when you look at athletes, like physically, they will be larger, they will be faster, they will have larger limbs. And it's not the same when people say, like, oh, but there's women who are even the women that are sort of, for all intents and purposes, very unusual, because you can have like Michael Phelps, is very gifted, but no, it's not that. It's just that men and women are different. And it doesn't matter whether you call yourself a woman, you're still different. You'll be taller, you'll be faster, you'll have a very different hip alignment to your body. The way that you walk will be different. The way that you therefore run will be different.
Well, have you seen, I mean, I know this is like really trivializing the whole argument now, but have you seen that simple test that it was going around the internet for a while, a few years ago, where you bend over and you have your head against a wall and then you try and pick up a chair?
Oh, yeah.
And then you have to stand up. And that in itself proves, I know it's a silly thing, but it just proves how different physiologically men and women are.
Yeah. But this is the thing where I'm just like, it's completely idiotic. I had this conversation with like some really idiotic husband of a friend of mine who kind of went like, oh, see, this is what happens. Feminists, they just want women and men to be the same. And I'm like, that's not what feminism is. And men and women are not the same. We're very, very different. And it deserves to be acknowledged that both is worth equally, that to me is what feminism is about. It's not to establish that we're the same, that just because if I'm a strong woman, I can carry heavy things. That's not how it works. The sexes are completely different.
But there are people, I mean, I don't know who these people are necessarily, but there are people that do push that view that men and women are the same,
Yeah, but that's nonsense. I mean, in my opinion, like I said, I'm very opinionated, but I think that's nonsense.
But I'm just trying to think who are the people that are actually pushing that view, though? Because so from what you're saying, that isn't a standard feminist view.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there's no standard feminist view anymore. I mean, you've got so broad. It's such a broad church, if you will. You've got feminists, you've got lesbian separatists, you've got moderate feminists, and you've got people like Posey Parker who don't describe themselves as feminist at all, but who have very much a feminist sort of agenda, in the sense that she demands to be taken serious, despite.
Is she kind of like a feminist in action, but not in sort of labels?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. But then even that, there's lots of people who absolutely loathe her guts. There's lots of people who have an opinion online, and then you realize quickly that if you're one of them, then you also will be held immediately to standards of whoever wants to criticize you. And the reality is you can never, and you should never, agree with everyone. It would be super boring. When you were saying that earlier, that we disagree on things, of course we do.
Well, that's what's going to make any conversation we have is going to be, it could be fiery, or it could just be interesting, or we could just agree to disagree.
Yeah, I disagree with certain points that I had a couple of years ago, and I reserve the right to do so, like, because otherwise, how the hell am I going to learn and
you change, don't you? You change your views. I'll tell you what. There's one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because I thought, I bet you will know about this, because I've only glanced at the headlines. But is there a case currently in the UK where a rapist is going to be let off with rape because he's now identifying as a woman? Have you heard about this case?
I don't know if it's going to be let off. I have read about that stuff before. I just now read about a rapist who suddenly discovered, the thing that Peter Tatchell always says never happens. Who suddenly discovered that he's a woman He's a convicted rapist, but now that he's, you know, going through the courts, he now has.
It's that, yeah, it's this case. That is the case.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think the judge has said, I think this is it. I think the judge has said that if the jury decide that he is true in what he's saying, that he wants to be a woman, that will have an impact on what the
what will happen is, it's not that he's not going to be convicted, but what will happen, and this is the most disgusting thing that I hope people will be taken responsible for when all is said and done, is he will go into a female prison. And then those woke idiots say, oh yeah, but they have risk assessment. I mean, how much more risk assessment do you need than knowing that this guy raped women? He has no place being anywhere near women. It doesn't matter what the hell he thinks he is. Like, yeah, no, that's the reason that.
Well, I had this argument. So, say if you're okay, let's say I'm a rapist stroke murderer. Let's just say that, for people will be quoting me now. Now I've said that, it'll be all over the internet tomorrow. So I'm going to get life imprisonment. So I'm going to be, for life, I'm going to be stuck with a load of men that probably hate me because I'm a rapist. So it would make sense for me, if I wanted a nice, easy life, to pretend that I was a woman so that I could be around the thing that I prey on. You know, that why that you're going to be in prison for life anyway.
Yeah. What man would do that?
Well,
that's the argument. It is so dumb that I often can't believe it when they say it out loud. It's like, did you read that backwards before you like said it out loud? It's so stupid.
Yeah, because it's well, you could, by their argument, you'd say, well, what man is going to stalk women and rape them? You know, it's like, well, this happens. Some men do, you know.
Not only that, but if you look at the Catholic Church and the whole pedophilia issue, it's like, it's not that someone who has nefarious ideas wouldn't go out of their way to get what they want. And to say that that isn't true is just idiotic.
And to do massive life changes, like you're saying about becoming a priest, that's a big life change.
Exactly.
You know, I've just got to show you a couple of comments. So Adam, he's one of our long-term watchers. He just put he has a todger. So I think he's talking about the guy in prison. And there's one from a little bit earlier that I want to show. This is about your work. And Swami just says amazing work, which it is. So we don't have many people watching us live today because it's most of the viewers are American, and it's in the morning for them at the moment. So they're probably having breakfast. So I'm trying to think if there was any. So we've covered the Royal Academy, haven't we? We've covered your first cancellation, and then was the Royal Academy your second cancellation? Would you say?
Yeah.
Oh, how do I get that off now? So what? I'm trying to think. What else can we? Did we say we wanted to talk about? I'm trying to remember now.
I don't know. We covered my crochet exploration. I mean, I'm sure once I'm selling patterns there, I'll offend the whole crochet community.
Oh yeah, they're as bad. Trust me, the knitters and the crocheters are just as bad.
No,
I'll tell you what I wanted to look at, because I think this is what some people are going to be quite interested in. Because I'm interested, even though I don't think I have the skill to do it. Is your kits?
Yeah.
So these are embroidery kits. Are they all about £30 thereabouts, or are they all? Yeah, they all look to be about £30 there. So are these kits that you've designed?
Yeah.
Wow, that's so. Without giving away your secrets, how do you design a piece? Do you draw it first, or do you do it freestyle?
No, I draw it first.
You draw. So you are a good art. Yeah, you're definitely a good artist. Then, yeah, I can see that.
I draw it first, and then. But this is the thing with the kits. It's like I need to simplify them. Like this is quite simplified if you see the rest of my work, because I want people to be able to do it. You know. Because the stuff that I do is very freestyle, where this is a lot more kind of.
So when you do with the I mean, how do you have instructions on how to actually do the I'm being really naive here. I don't know what your stitches are called.
That's the idea behind it. It's like you need to be able to read through it while being very naive and figuring out what it is that I'm trying to teach you.
I mean, these are great. These are clever. These remind me of I've forgotten her name now. Is it O'Keefe, Georgia O'Keefe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. They're all like a pan on vaginas, aren't they? Like all over stuff. You know, Holy Vajoli, and hilariously, someone went with the cactus one. It's like, oh, I really want to get that hairy avocado. thought hilarious.
Oh, that's making me wince.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's just, I mean, yeah, I could do a
They're
lot more,
great.
but I think the next ideas will flow into crochet patterns, and it's easier because then people can just download it instead of me having to prepare the kits and stuff.
Yeah, because it's always amazed me that, because I've done the cross stitch thing, but everything with sewing does seem to come in a kit. You don't seem to buy in. Well, I know you probably buy individual things because you're doing it yourself, but you don't often see people buying individual threads.
Yeah,
I know you can. Is it DMC? Is that one of the big brands? I don't know. Is that the kind of thread you would use, the DMC type, or do you use special thread? Or
I use DMC for the patterns, but just because it's the most well-known one and recognizable, so if people need to buy more or whatever, But I do use DMC, but they dropped me. They sponsored me for
no.
Oh yeah, they sponsored me for events that I've done in the past. But they didn't do it very official. They just sort of stopped, But no, I've got a whole like shelf full of DMC. I milked them for what it was worth.
Good.
But no, I mean, the embroidery community appealed to them and said, you can't associate with her. And then but no, that I actually use loads of different threads because I quite like the difference of texture, even like shitty, really sort of rough textured Chinese thread that's really sort of dry, for want of a better word. I quite like it because I like to mix the different threads because that also helps create highs and lows and so I don't have a particular favorite one.
Yeah, because some will be shiny, won't they? And then others are not going to be shiny because yeah. I mean, I still can't get. I just can't get that hand one out of my head because I just think the veins on the back of that is just amazing. I want to show it again before we. Where was it? Where will I find it on your website now? What will it be under? Shop and
original artwork.
Here we go. There we go. I've got to show this again. I know I'm obsessed with this. Sorry, I keep. See that I would have that on my wall. I just think it's absolute as a piece. I think everything about this works as a piece of art, as the what it means, because this is a little bit like the non-binary people. All the youngsters now are turning non-binary because it's the trendy thing to do, and the pronouns, isn't it? So yeah, this it's so good.
But no, I definitely that was inspirations behind it.
Oh, the other thing I wanted to quickly mention, because I think we'll have to wrap it up shortly, because I think Finn's getting a little bit restless there, isn't he?
He's currently falling asleep.
Oh, is it? Oh, cool. Is your thread sketches, because these I thought were really interesting. So these are, for your average person, these are a little bit more affordable if you're not a high art kind of person, aren't they? Are they about £300, £400 or something?
Yeah.
So what you do here is, do they give you a photograph and then you create a picture from that photo?
If you go to the homepage, I think there was somewhere I need to update my website.
It's on the front there, isn't it?
Yeah, and if you scroll back further down, there's like a whole.
Oh, they're cool. They are cool. So you're literally drawing with the needle and thread, aren't you?
Yeah. So what I use for that, basically, I came up with that at the start of the pandemic because I thought, fuck, how am I gonna, what am I gonna do? So instead of framing them back then, I said, if you want to send your friends like a little something through the letterbox, we can just embroider it and I send it and they can get it framed, And I've done hundreds since. And I sold them back then for 50 quid because I just wanted to make sure that I can pay my rent. But actually now, thanks to everything that happened, I had to register for VAT and I've basically put them up in price because they take time. What I'm doing here is tambour embroidery, which is traditionally, it's the embroidery that you do to apply beads and sequins and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a tambour hook. Looks like this.
Oh, let me make you bigger. Hold on a second. How do I do this?
So it's a tambour hook. And it's like a needle in the front that's half open. It's like a spiky crochet hook, if you will.
Is it a bit like what people do rag rugging with? Is it like, have you seen those? They've got like a little...
No.
No.
I know what you mean, but it's different again. So
Right.
tumble embroidery is literally usually how you, for haute couture, how you apply really quickly lots of beads and needles. But what you can do without, it's like it's almost as if you were a hand, like a human sewing machine, if you will, because
Oh, is it like punching?
yeah, one hand is above and the other hand is underneath the canvas, and you wrap underneath the canvas, you wrap the thread around, then you need to turn it on top, and it's about pressure and going in and out and in and out. And what I realized, like I'm not really into beads and stuff like that, but what
Yeah.
I realized is that it lends itself really great to create really organic drawings with the needle, because what it creates is a teeny weeny chain stitch essentially. So
Ah.
yeah, so I would pre-draw them, and at the start of this, I still would transfer the old-fashioned way and trace through and stuff. And then I realized through talking to people and that basically I can pre-draw this on my iPad and then print it with my home printer onto that fabric because it's got the right size. And so I
Wow.
can just print it out and then stitch right onto it, which is great. So
So do you have to have special fabric that will go through a printer? Will any printer work then to
any
do
printer
that?
will work, but what you will need is Bonder web.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
So you bond it together, and I usually use a bit of stiffener as well, like to just stiffen the fabric.
Like
Then
a
I iron it
starch or
together.
something.
Exactly. Then I iron it together so that it's really hard, and then you put it through the printer. Obviously, there have been casualties.
Yeah. How many printers have you had to buy?
No. Printers are still the same, but obviously sometimes it really like
Choose it
crunches
up.
up. You really need to make sure that it's super flat and it can't be too thick fabric. But these ones are napkins. They're like I buy them on a roll. They're napkins. And and so it goes much quicker, and because of how I stitch with that technique, it just goes so much quicker than it would if it was just um hand and needle.
So do you do that printing technique when you do your embroidery as well for yourself when you start? Is it the same?
Um,
Or do you
so
hand draw it onto the
I
material?
mean, I used to, but now because I work on really big pieces most of the time, I can't do that on my printer at home, but I do get it printed on fabric with a company that print fab or whatever they're called. Yeah, I think so.
That's another, was that another JK one I just saw there? Is that
Yeah,
JK?
that's easy, but someone wanted that, so
How do
yeah,
I go back? I want to go back to show it. Ah, here we go.
yeah, that.
I mean, these are great. They are great because these would be brilliant presents for people, wouldn't they? Especially things like if someone's died or something like that, and you want to have
Yeah,
just some a lot of people go for paintings and drawings, don't they? But yeah,
but
I'd love to have my cats done.
yeah, well, yeah, I've done actually lots of cats and dogs, but now they all come in like a little black frame, like the other one on top. So these ones were all unframed from the pandemic, but now they will all be framed,
Right.
mounted. So
I tell you what else you're good at as well, which is another sign of a good artist, is people that can draw children without turning them into like little dwarfs. Children's faces are so hard to draw. The moment you put a line there, they're instantly 70 years old.
that's the funny thing, because you'd think, you get a photo and then it's straightforward, but actually it's sort of the art of omitting things, isn't it? Like if you put too
Yeah.
much in it, it's exactly what you just said. It's if you put too much in it, if you put not enough in it, it could completely mess with it. Because just tracing every line doesn't work, does it? So
Yeah, I mean, I learned that very early on because I draw caricatures and things as well and portraits. Or I,
yeah,
I don't do it very
yeah,
often anymore. But I remember the first time somebody asked me to do their 2-year-old child, I knew. I just thought, no, this is something right. I had to really sort of pare it right down, like you're saying. You have to just have the bare minimum of facial features for a child, I think.
exactly. Yeah,
Which is why ugly and older people are easier to draw, I find, because the more character that's there, the
yeah.
easier it is to draw it. Oh, these are fantastic. I don't know. It's I tell you, there's another picture that you've done that blew me away, and it's of the feminist lesbian, and I don't know, where can we find that one? Where will that be on here?
The feminist.
I think she's a feminist lesbian. It's a lesbian anyway, and there's a load of people behind her. And
Leanne.
yeah, is
I
that on your website?
don't know if it's on my website, but if you put into Google quickly, there is no cis in team.
There is no cis in team.
Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe that will come up, and then go images.
Images. Yeah, is that it, or is that the photograph there?
No, that's it. That's the embroidery.
Wow, this is it. Yeah. It is so good. Okay, now I'm going to do my art thing on this one. So first of all, it's a great, that I feel like I know that woman.
Yeah.
But I don't know. No idea. But I get so much of her personality from everything about that. And I know that you've copied that from a photo, I'm assuming, so I know that isn't just you that's brought that across, but you've nailed it. But it's the thing that got me was the paving underneath. It is stunning. It's just so well done. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So what's the story behind this picture?
Well, so this, I just really wanted to make it. In fact, I'm so stupid. I could have just shown you. I've got it in front of me here.
On the wall.
No, it's not framed yet, because I want to do a solo exhibition in about a couple of years, and that'll be there. And this is one of a couple of pieces. That one, and then there's one that hangs at the top there on the wall.
Yeah.
That's about domestic violence and stuff, and those are two pieces where I want to sell them, because that's what I used to do, where I drifted off earlier from. If I want to support a cause and I don't have the money to do it, then I'd like to do it by donating my time and my art, and then making money that way, kind of thing. I used to support the Vagina Museum until it became the Penis Museum, and because they're proper woke. And so with those pieces, they will be part of my exhibition, but the proceeds will go to, Get the L Out in this case, and to Women's Place UK, because this was a conference where I was at. I saw that when this was taken, the photo, because there were all these like dimwits in the background. This is why it's called There's No Cis in Team, because that was literally on someone's placard, and it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Because right, there's no cis in team, you dipshit.
Anyway, there's no I in team, but there's me.
Hilarious. There's no cis in team. How stupid can you get? But anyway, so I thought it was a great title, and Leanne just standing there like a true trooper. It's just great, because even though that they're not going to do anything because there was far too many people around, but it's still quite intimidating when you go at 9 o'clock in the morning and you have to do the perp walk, past these idiots who scream at you what a horrible person you are. And Leanne is.
So these were screaming at her, the people behind her.
These were screaming at all of us. And Leanne is part of the security team for Filia, for Women's Place UK, and and so Leanne will make sure that they will not bother you. And she was just posting in front of them, basically. But yeah, so I want to be Jess.
Well, I should tell you, political incorrectness is, this is, I think it's DK, Deplorable Knitter. And I know she interviewed the famous artist Birdie Rose. So I'll put you in touch. She might want you to go on her show. Well, I think she will want you to go on her show.
But no, so you rock up there in the morning, and I mean, this one was all right because it was so big. But I've seen other Women's Place UK meetings in Brighton, for example, where there's also older feminists that would like go walk younger feminists through those people who throw water at you and shout at you, and it feels quite threatening at times,
Yeah.
It didn't so much then, but there's still something that gets your blood volume up when you have people shouting at you. And Leanne basically is one of the people that will make sure that everybody stays safe and sort of help us walk past that. Because
I wouldn't mess with her.
You
wouldn't mess with this woman, would you? No way.
Because it just looked hilarious. They were just paint in that little bit where they had to stand. They weren't allowed to go past that. But they were still shouting, at people, and she just posed in front of them, which made it quite, it sort of made light of a situation that's still very uncomfortable, because it is really uncomfortable, and especially if you do, like, it's on YouTube, like Women's Place UK meetings, some of the protests that you see that they get, and I know all the people that organize these things because I've gone to many. It's quite brave, the shit that they have to put up with.
I mean, I've seen, not in life, I've not been to any of these protests, but I've seen it where they'll have things like kill TERFs.
Yeah, but the ones in, like, for Women's Place UK, you have people shouting at you, and in real life, that's really quite threatening,
Yeah.
And there was one particular one in Brighton. If you, I mean, not now, but if you look on YouTube later, Women's Place UK Brighton meeting, where for the entire time, so there was a woman on the inside of the meeting who got a panic attack because of it, because it was downstairs, and police was there the whole time. They didn't do anything, and the protesters was kick and bang against the windows and shout the whole time.
It does make you wonder, what would they do if they got you?
Yeah.
Because I think that's what it's going to take, isn't it? It's going to take somebody being really hurt or even killed before they deal with the people.
And then one of the Posey Parker, in the speaker's corner, there was a older lesbian who got beaten by a trans woman, like who whacked her over the hat.
Well, doesn't that just prove the whole point that men are not women? Because
of course, not that needs proving, but I mean. But so this was that event, and I just
sorry, my phone's ringing. I'll just ignore it. I don't know whether it's doing anything to the screen. It's probably somebody that knows I'm doing a live and they're doing this to annoy me. It'll go off in a second.
That's right. Nope.
Trouble is, I'm using my phone as a camera, so I can't actually do anything with my phone. Otherwise, the camera goes wrong.
Yeah.
We'll have to dance along to the... it's gone off now. Hopefully they'll stay off. Sorry about that, everyone. I should have turned my thing down.
Yeah, but anyway, so that was... I just loved the picture, and so I turned it into an embroidery.
A Stitch in the Sky. I met Leanne in Newcastle holding the line. A Stitch in the Sky. She has her own vlog, by the way, if anybody wants to check it out. She's up in Newcastle or Middlesbrough somewhere. I presume it's Newcastle because she's mentioned it here. Yeah. So we're all out there. There are people that support you. We're all out there all over the place, aren't we?
Yeah, no, I mean, if nothing, when the Royal Academy thing kicked off, I got so many emails from people, and it was really sweet because there were some emails from people like, "Oh, I come from a small village in England, and I would have never heard of you if it wasn't for this, and this is outrageous," and And it was funny because it was people then suddenly that ended up buying some feminist paraphernalia just to support me, not because they
probably wouldn't have bought it. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because when I did the magazine, I mean, it's nothing on the scale of what you've had, but they tried to cancel the magazine they keep trying to cancel the magazine, and they got it taken down initially, and all that did was it just made people want to actually read it more. So I was expecting about 2,000, 3,000 readers at the most. That was what was in my head, and that magazine ended up getting some, I think it's the count at the moment is 25,000 readers, which it's nothing compared to what you do, I know, but it just shows that a bit of negative publicity actually is a good thing, if you twist it on its head.
It can be if you can work through it, but I have also seen people's livelihood pretty much, which is horrible and must not be. Yeah, it's lucky that it turned that way with me, to be honest. And same with you, because I have seen it doing really terrible things with people's careers, and I understand why people hesitate to put their head above the parapet, because A, it's really difficult to actually deal with. B, it does have really real life consequences.
It depends what you've got to lose as well, doesn't it? When I did did the magazine, I had nothing to lose.
But also what you're willing to lose, because the thing is, like, once it comes to, say, your partners, like Graham Linehan, they went after his wife.
That was awful what they did to him.
Really horrible.
Yeah. For people that don't know who he is, he's the guy that wrote some of our best sitcoms, isn't he? He wrote Father Ted. I can't even remember the other ones now. And what a nice guy he is. And I I can't even remember what his crime was now. What was it that he actually did wrong in their eyes? I can't remember.
Oh, he also says that trans women are men.
Yeah.
But and he's very vocal on it, but then he also has lots of people in the feminist circles who are like, oh, I hate him, he's shit, da, da, da.
Right.
I like him. I think he's a very nice guy, and he's been very vocal where he didn't have to. Yeah, the IT crowd, yeah. IT crowd.
Did he do One Foot in the Grave as well? Or is that somebody else?
I'm not sure about that. I know he did Motherland as well. But yeah, I mean, it cost him his marriage, this whole thing, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So if they go for your family, and if you know, if not everybody there pulls on the same string, because if they know that they can't go for you, they will try and go for everything around you.
Well, my advice to anybody who's doing anything even remotely public is keep as much as you can to yourself. You know, don't tell anybody where your partner works. Don't tell anybody, you know, where your parents live or work. You know, I know these things seem silly, and often you might talk about it, you know, but you've got to protect other people, not just yourself.
You do, because sometimes people force people to their knees on behalf of wanting to protect their loved ones, you know, not because they're convinced. So I understand why some people backpedal, even though it's just painful to watch.
Well, you know, we were talking about the crowds before, and like in the image here, and somebody sent me something. I don't know where it's come from, but it's a video, so it's real. But it's a crowd like this, and they're all non-binary, so they're all boys that are kind of half dressed as women, presenting as women, and half not. But they're barking like dogs, like absolutely deranged, and I don't think it's a joke.
No.
You know. And I just think, what is going on? What's happening to people? I just don't understand.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of, particularly with guys, I think porn culture has a lot to answer for there. You know, I mean, if you Google sissification porn, it will explain a lot to you.
Oh, wow. I won't do that now.
Not that you have,
so,
but
sissification porn.
And that's when you also realize just how deeply sexist this whole thing is at its core. It's like there is fetish that fetishizes the sort of status of the woman, if you will, in society as second-class citizens, kind of thing. You know, that's also, you hear it really often when people go like, oh, why would they go through all this, you know, knowing that it would make life harder? It's like, stick a fucking hard on for it, you know. I mean, and this is the problem. It's like, when people say, oh, protect trans kids, there is such a gulf of a difference between a grown-ass man who gets a kink out of dressing up in women's clothing, a young girl who rejects her body, which most of them do anyway, except now they're getting supported by it, particularly homosexual young girls, you know, like now there is the magic pill, how society will accept you, except it's bullshit, but that's the problem. It's like they have nothing in common. So the trans community is a complete misnomer. Those people, there's complete different reasons why people might want to reject or be in distress. And I totally believe that that's a genuine distress, but I also believe that can be caused even by a fetish. If you become so enamored with the idea of being this thing that you know that you're not, but you get a kick out of it and you live your life more and more, it becomes an addiction, right? And so then it becomes upsetting. I can see how that could be upsetting. So there's a million roads to Rome, if you wish, you know?
And most girls going through puberty have a very, very different experience than boys going through puberty, you know, because their bodies change in much more dramatic ways.
Of course.
You know?
And really quickly as well. Like you can go from like 9 to 11 and suddenly you've got boobs and grown-ass men lust after you, and it's disgusting because you're completely not equipped emotionally to deal with it. And it's not to say that young boys don't have an issue in puberty either. Everybody finds puberty hard. That's the nature of puberty. And the problem now is it's not just like goth or anything like that. It's freaking medication and chopping off body parts and stuff like that.
It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, I said once on a tweet or a Instagram thing that I think it should be made as hard as possible to transition, and I got a lot of pushback for that, but I stand by that, and I think no, it should be, you know, it should only be the people that are willing to jump through the hoops of whatever it is they have to do in the hope that they will, you know, go back and change their mind. Because I think a lot of the women or the girls that are now becoming trans, I think they're just lesbians that don't don't accept themselves.
100%.
And I think the lesbian community, I mean, I don't know, I'm sure the lesbian community is really under attack at the moment, you know, or it seems to be.
100%. If you have guys that say like, "Oh, I'm a lesbian, but I have a beard and a penis," and then
oh yeah, and you still have to have sex with me, otherwise you're transphobic. That
insane, absolutely,
it's crazy, isn't it? It's like, what is it they call people? Gender? Is it gender fetishists? They call people that won't sleep with trans people.
I don't even care.
Yeah, there's something.
I mean,
here we go. What's this?
All of it, but you know,
autogynophiles. Yeah, a lot of the men are autogynophiliacs or whatever the phrase is.
No,
Buffalo
right.
Bill. Yeah.
And so that's the thing, and the thing about it also, because I've spent so much time in fetish clubs, you know, it's like there's part of that fetish that requires people to respond to it, you know, because if they weren't, then where's the kick, right? If you just radar, if you don't rattle anyone the wrong way, and so that's the thing. So there's a lot of different people who have different reasons for wanting to transition. Some of them really sad, really traumatic stories. Others just deeply perverted fetishists, you know, and it's been made palatable for the general public, and they haven't got a clue about it.
Well, the other thing, the biggest thing that upsets me about it is this thing where they say, "Oh, you know, puberty blockers are reversible," you know, and it's like, really?
Yeah.
You can make a woman's voice go back to being a woman's voice after she's had testosterone, you know, and things like that. Can that happen? Don't think so.
And you can't reconstruct the breasts once you cut them off because there's not enough skin and stuff like that, you know. It's horrible.
Oh, I hadn't considered that. So they would have to have something done where the skin would stretch, wouldn't they? Before, right? Wow.
You know,
I never even thought about that.
Yeah, you can't put silicone in there because it isn't, you know. So, no, it's the whole thing. If it really was just playing around with, you know, outfits and haircuts and stuff, it's a whole different story. But it's not. We're talking about like life-changing surgeries and medications and stuff like that. We're like, no, this should be really well considered, and even if it is, then it should be even more considered. And that's not even said that will actually make your life more positive. There's very few cases where it might do. And if someone is an adult and makes those decisions, you know, I'm also not a fan of like silicone breasts and stuff like that. But if you're an adult and you think that will enrich your life, or if you think, you know, like, because to me, that's just succumbing to that sort of idea of what a woman should look like. And so it's sad in that case too. But yeah, if you're an adult and you think that's what you have to do, then whatever, you know, do what you have to do.
Yeah, because even it's funny that you say that, because even Blair White, I think you'll know who Blair White is. Yeah, even the transgender people that, you know, pass for all intents and purposes, they don't act like women. Blair White doesn't act like an ordinary woman would. She may look like a woman, but her mannerisms are different.
Well, Blair White is just cosplaying the utmost sort of sexist stereotype of what many men think a woman should look like.
Yeah, like the coquettishness, is that the word? Yeah, and the flicking the hair and, you know, all that, which you've not done anywhere in this video today. So
I'm by the standards of all that identity bullshit, I should be a man anyway, because, you know,
your hands.
Yes, but also, you know, just from my character, like the fact that I'm not agreeable at all, and that I sort of hold my line. That's not very feminine, is it? You know.
Yeah, that's one of Jordan Peterson's things, isn't it? That he says that women, on the whole, generally are more agreeable than men, which is possibly one of the reasons why, you know, they don't perhaps get paid as well as the male counterparts. Maybe I don't know about that, whether that's the thing, but. Yeah, I think we're going to have to wrap it up now, because we've been on for just over 2 hours, I think, haven't we? And I think you need to have a rest. And
he's sleeping now, so that's good.
Is he sleep? Every time I say this, I say, "Well, let's wrap it up," he suddenly goes back to sleep.
No, he's asleep all the time. He's on my boob making noises while sleeping.
Wow.
This is
Babies are amazing things, aren't they?
he just hangs there going, hmm. His eyes are closed and he's asleep, so that's good.
Have you done any portraits of him yet, or are you going to wait, or are you never going to do any?
I haven't yet, but when I do, it'll probably, like the baby sort of stuff, I think it'll be about breastfeeding, because I'm just so amazed about breastfeeding. That was a whole new world to me. And the mummy thing as well. I mean, you can see that cast in the back there. That's my pregnant body. And there was a whole lot of stuff that really kind of went a bit tits up with my birth, which I didn't anticipate, because I got diagnosed with preeclampsia. So there's going to be a whole lot of artwork in there, because I had to be induced and stuff like that. So
that's very dangerous, isn't it? That would kill you, wouldn't it?
It can be, but there was a whole lot of pressure directed at me and my husband that I didn't appreciate. And anyway, there's going to be a whole lot of art. I don't know that I'm going to have a portrait of him just for the portrait's sake, but there'll definitely be him on my boob in some pictures.
Have you had, what's the reaction been to breastfeeding, or chest feeding, as we have to say these days?
No, we do not have to say that, because that's nonsense. There hasn't been, I think generally speaking, I have in public and private the demeanor that people don't necessarily want to come and fuck with.
Right.
So if I walk my boob out in public, I don't really get any adverse reactions. I haven't actually had any problems, to be honest. I was quite tempted to crochet him a tit hat. Have you seen them?
Oh, yes, yeah.
You look like a massive boob with a nipple, and you put it on their head.
When you're breastfeeding.
When you're breastfeeding.
Do it.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, now, because he's 5 months old, it's often enough that he lets me sit there, boob out anyway, because everything around is so interesting. So he'll feed, and suddenly go, and then I'm sitting there, boob out. But nah, I mean, I'm German, right? Like, we're into all of that. we just go nude. It's fine. No worries.
Yeah, that's very strange. Something I can't understand about Germans. Mind you, it's not just Germans. It's a lot of European countries are very similar. Scandinavia is very much the same, isn't it?
Yeah. Get it all out.
Was British. Very uptight.
You do it in clubs.
Well, Adam said something here about breastfeeding.
Okay, but women breastfeeding, we have to affirm something who claims to be a woman doing so. Oh God, yeah. Oh God, yeah.
Oh, do you know? I saw something the other day that knocked me sick, and it's clearly two men. So they're clearly two gay men, and one of them is a woman now, and I was trying to breastfeed a child.
I've seen that. It's horrific.
Oh,
yeah.
It's not even worth thinking about, is it?
No, I mean, and it's genuinely gross, because those are people who take hormones. It's the same issue that I have with this whole like trans men who suddenly become pregnant, the most female thing ever, and yet they reject their femaleness. It's like, oh, fuck off. The thing that I have issue with there, and also this idea of like womb transplant and shit like that, it's like, your narcissism is so great that you will risk feeding this newborn baby that has no choice your fucking hormones that are in you. That's disgusting. Like,
because they don't care about the child. That isn't the issue, is it?
Tool for affirmation, and I reject that completely. And so to me, there's nothing to do with any phobia or anything. It's really just like, if you do that to your body, that's one thing, but you're doing this to a child who can't do anything to defend itself. It's wrong.
I think I saw somebody say once, and I mean, we won't go into this whole other subject, but I think they said that it was a man who now says he's a woman that wants to have a womb transplant just so he can have an abortion. And it's like, what the hell is wrong with you? It's just,
it's disgusting, and it doesn't think it's true either. Like, even if you say it as a throwaway joke, which isn't funny, but the fact that a woman has to give her womb in order for a womb transplant to happen.
Oh God, I hadn't even considered that as well. Of course,
where's it coming from?
Yeah, so you got to make an actual real woman, barren. Is that the right word? Just so you can.
Or you convince lots of young girls that they should reject their bodies, and then it's a whole industry there, isn't it?
God, it's
and get a
crazy.
hysterectomy. But yeah, no, you need a woman to have a womb transplant.
Of course, yeah, it's like when you think about every tiny detail of this whole thing, it's just sickening. It's
Yeah, it is.
absolutely sickening. Because I don't know where, I can't envision where it's going to end up.
Well, I am hoping that sadly there will be lots of court cases of detransitioners who go, how dare you, which is, it's sad that it has to come that far, but I don't see any other way to put a stop on this until doctors who sign off on this get held accountable, go to prison for it even, to be honest, because they enable this shit, and so people who do that, even if they mean it well, and there's a lot of people who don't mean well, who just see a lot of financial, kickback.
Oh yeah, if you think about it, the pharmaceutical company, these are people that have to have hormones for life.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody makes money from that. Yeah,
hormones, operations, all of that. But no, like those people need to be held responsible, and I think that will only happen once there's a flood of detransitioners who go, how dare you let this happen to me? And it's sad that they have to sort of.
Well, I heard recently that there's in Manchester where I live, because there's a huge LGBT community in Manchester, that there's a group of detransitioners in Manchester, but they're not allowed to, everywhere they try and speak, they're not allowed to speak.
No, because they're the inconvenient truth.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Like whenever I have a chance to do it, I try and amplify detransitioner voices because they try to drown them out because nobody wants to hear that. Oh, that doesn't happen. Of course it fucking happens.
Yeah.
And it's horrible. It's sad, really.
So just to wrap up now then, because I think we need to end. So what is your next piece of work going to be, or can you not say?
No, I can't say.
But there's one in the works. So you are working on something.
It's big and it's going to make a lot of people very pissed off.
Oh, good. We like to hear that. So will you be cancelled a third time?
No, I think honestly the last time was so big that I'm sort of beyond that, because how could you? I've got like most of my work is private commissions, so you can't cancel that.
Yeah, that's good. That's
good.
So, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do after, because it's been a joy talking to you, and I'll at some point I'd like to talk again, because I'm sure there's going to be something else we can talk about at another point. But I'm going to try and put you in touch with Politically Incorrect Knitters, but also Kerry. Do you know Kerry Smith of Deprogrammed?
Maybe.
No. I'll set, well, afterwards I'll send you the details. You can have a look at both of them and see whether you want to talk to them as well, because I think they would really like to talk to you, and I'm sure they'll have a completely different perspective of things to ask you and stuff, because there's so much. I mean, we could talk for hours, couldn't we? Because you've got so much interesting things to talk about, but at some point we do have to stop, I'm afraid. So as a final thing then today, so thank you for coming on, but where am I? I'm looking on here. So, Jess, you have been blocked.